Hello, I'm Erica Bierstrom, Extension Agriculture Agent for Kewaunee County. This presentation is a summary of the 2020 land rent survey that was distributed to Door and Kewaunee County land renters and landowners. Land is both an asset and an expense, so it's important to get the most out of your investment. This summary will cover how the survey was developed, what questions were asked, and how participants answered. So let's begin. Before we start today, I want to give you a background on land rent in Kewaunee and Door counties. First of all, the National Ag Statistics Service does collect annual information from landowners. It is based on a survey, voluntary, and the survey only gives land rent averages. So it does collect information from each county in Wisconsin, and it collects the information of what people are paying for rent. It does not collect lease term information, and it doesn't collect any data from landowners who aren't in an agriculture or federal conservation program. So it's not going to collect any data from somebody who just happens to be a landowner, absentee landowners, anything like that. The 2019 rates, according to the National Ag Statistics Service in Door County, were $84 per acre per year. According to the survey that we distributed through extension, the number was about $74 per acre per year. In Kewaunee County, the National Ag Statistics Service said the average rent rate was $174 per acre per year, and the survey from extension said that it was about $203 per acre per year. I did do a land survey for Kewaunee and Southern Door County back in 2012. That was a survey that was trying to collect information on land rent, who was renting, what type of people, what kind of industries were renting land, if it was dairy, if it was livestock, whatever it may be. And while the survey did get only 36 responses, the information that was collected was very valuable. So it was collected on all 10 Kewaunee County towns and Southern Door, all towns in Southern Door as well. I did not distribute that survey to Northern Door at that time, mostly because of the lack of information, any kind of emails, a way to distribute it electronically to Northern Door farmers and landowners. Dairy was in an upswing at that time after 2 record low years, and so we were seeing some good prices in 2012. At that time, because there were pretty poor years previous, there was a rapid exit of dairy farmers, which was freeing up land for rent. Cash crops at the time were at record highs. Corn was at $8 a bushel, wheat was at $9 a bushel, and soybeans were at $14 a bushel. Cherry and apple crops suffered from historically early spring that year. If you recall, 2012 was a very, very warm spring, and right now we're in the middle of April 2020. No one is out planting corn, certainly in Kewaunee or Door counties, but back in 2012, they were in full swing of planting corn at this time. That early spring also wiped out the local sweet cherries and most of the tarts because we did have a very early spring, and then we had a freeze which killed a lot of the blossoms. Of course, as you recall, 2012 was a significant drought. We didn't suffer as much here in Kewaunee and Door as other parts of southern Wisconsin did, but it certainly was a dry year and a really tough year for getting good yields. So here we are today. Today we have, again, just come out of a pretty hard 4-year dairy recession, and prices here, as you can see, in 2020, were just the beginning of the 2020 year, we're really starting to pick up, really starting to see the end of the light at the end of the tunnel for some of these dairy farmers. And then we had this massive, very sharp drop here starting in the beginning of March, and that is, of course, because of the COVID-19 coronavirus. And it really did make that dairy industry stumble quite a bit. Cash crops right now, soybeans are at $8.80 a bushel, corn at $3.40 a bushel, and wheat at $5.68 a bushel. So Here we are 8 years later after 2012, and prices are about half of what they were at that time. Cherries are now also a fraction of 2012's prices with an increased cost of production. The one thing that we can say that is a benefit, I guess, of this coronavirus situation and the slowing of our economy is that our gas prices are extremely cheap right now. So the inputs for that are going to help the farmers out a little bit, I guess. So moving on to the 2020 survey. It was written by myself and Annie Deutsch, who was the former agriculture educator in Door County. We use Qualtrics as our data collection. It's UW-Madison and Division of Extension's preferred data collection software. The survey itself was anonymous. We don't want to know where people were from other than what town they lived in or what town their land was in. And beyond that, we did not want to know much more about them other than what type of industry or what kind of enterprise they were within agriculture. The survey was sent via email to email lists. They were shared with county employees and county boards, promoted on Midwest Farm Weekly, other local media, social media, and Door County Daily News. It was made available via paper copy if it was requested, but no one requested a paper copy, so all of our results were collected electronically. The survey opened on December 1st, 2019, and it was open through February 15th of 2020. We did collect 102 responses. We're happy with the results that we did get. We did get 102, so that's quite a significant increase over 2012. We don't know how many it was actually distributed to, but we're still happy with the responses we did get. General information was the same for both landowners and land renters on the survey. And one section of the survey took the survey to specific questions based on their response. So if they said they were a landowner, they were given 4 options for criteria and what they were looking for renters. And if they were the renter, they were given 10 options for land rent priorities. So what were those land renters looking for as land priorities? And I'll get to that a little bit later. With Door County, we received responses from 12 of the 14 towns. In Kewaunee County, we received responses from 8 of the 10 towns. So with the survey and the results, not everyone who completed the survey answered every question. So some of the questions won't necessarily all add up to 102 responses because, again, not everyone answered every single question, but most people answered all the questions. Land rent rates. So those responding to the rate questions, Door County, we received 55 responses. In Kewaunee County, we received 43 responses. A total of 98 land rent rate responses were collected. 3 people did not complete that rental rate question. And then we had 1 outlier answer in Egg Harbor, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. So just going on in what you will see here as we are talking about the responses, N is the number of responses. So if it says N equals something, like it says right here, N equals 55, that means how many responses were received. The range is the range of responses, lowest to highest. Mean is the average, and median is the middle number of all the responses. So starting out with Door County, with Bailey's Harbor, we had 2 responses, so N equals 2. Our range was $20 to $65. Our mean was $32.50, and the median also was $32.50. The mean and the median will be the same when there are only 2 responses. At least it was in this case. So also, as I go through this here, you will see that I have outlined each town. So for those of you who are not familiar with where these towns are located in each of these counties, I'll have them highlighted for you. Moving on, Brussels. So Brussels is in Southern Door on the Kewaunee County line. We received 5 responses, and the range was $75 to $150. The mean was 110, and the median was 75. Clay Banks, we received 6 responses. The range was $80 to $150, and the mean was $125.83, and the median was $137.50. Moving on to Egg Harbor, we received 3 responses. So the range here was $20 to $1,000. And so this is the one that I said it was an outlier. You can see here we received that one response that was $1,000. So I'm not really sure if that person meant to say that they collected $1,000 for the entire year for rent. Maybe they didn't understand that we were asking per acre and not a total. But either way, I can show you here that the reason I did not include it in the responses, other than to note that it was collected, is that if we did collect that $1,000 per acre, it would have brought Egg Harbor's mean to $356 an acre. And we know that based off of the towns around it, $356 per acre for average is not what the other towns are getting. So I left it out, but did note that it was collected. So if we take that $1,000 out, the mean was $35 and the median was $50. Forestville, we received 11 responses. Forestville, we had the most responses from Forestville, so that was great to see that. The range was $50 to $200, and the mean was $116.36, and the median was $100. With Gardner, we received 2 responses. The range was $110 to $160. The mean was $135, and the median also was $135. Gibraltar, we had 1 response only. The range, we had the $20. It wasn't a range, so everything was $20. So that 1 response was indeed $20 per acre. Moving on to Jacksonport, we received 5 responses. The range was $20 to $50. The mean was $36, and the median was $35. Liberty Grove, 3 responses. The range was $35 to $100. The mean was $61.66, and the median was $50. Nassauwampie, we received 7 responses. The range was $50 to $225 per acre. The mean was $113.10, and the median was $100. In Sevastopol, we received 8 responses. The range was $50 to $100. The mean was $71, and the median was $75. Sturgeon Bay, it's a very small town. There's not a lot of farmland in that particular area. We did receive 2 responses though. The range was $20 to $50. The mean was $35, and the median was $35 as well. In Door County, we did not receive responses from Washington Island here, or the town of Washington, or in the town of Union. The thing about that is that there is a lot of land on Washington Island that is used for agriculture, growing wheat or other cash crops. There's a lot of pasture land too for horses, but it is unfortunate we didn't receive a response from either of these 2 towns. Union, as we know, it is on the Kewaunee County line. It's very close to the Brown County line. And we know there's a lot of farming going on in the town of Union. So it would have been nice to have some information on that. I would guess that it would have been very similar to Brussels and Gibraltar and probably northern Kewaunee County as well. But we'll have to just assume that they're similar and hope that is acceptable for those who are in that town if they ask for those results. So moving on to Kewaunee County, the town of Anape received 7 responses. The range was $40 to $230. The mean was $142.85, and the median was $150. In the town of Carlton, we received 10 responses. The range was $60 to $500. The mean was $191.50, and the median was $147. So I did leave this response. Of course, here $500 seems like a lot for acreage for 1 acre, but knowing what is in that area and from what I've heard for many years here, being in Kewaunee County and extension. That number is, while it is high, on the high end for range of rate, it is not out of the question. So we do hear of range rates that high in that area, and it is certainly an acceptable answer for this survey purpose. The town of Casco, we received 10 responses. The range was 80 to 275. The mean was 206.50 and the median was 225. Town of Franklin, we received 6 responses. The range was 75 to 225. The mean was $145 and the median was $135. In the town of Lincoln, we received 7 responses. The range was $115 to $400. The mean was $225.71 and the median was $250. In the town of Luxembourg, unfortunately, we only received 1 response. That response was $275. So of course, the mean and the median were also $275. And the town of Pierce, we received 2 responses. Both of them were $225. The mean would have been $225 then, and the median also $225. In West Kewaunee, we received 4 responses. The range was $60 to $225, which made the mean $183.75 and the median $225. We did not receive responses from the town of Montpelier, right here, and the town of Red River. So as you recall, with Door County, Union is right here. And so between Union, Door County, no responses. Red River, no responses. Town of Luxembourg, only 1 response. Town of Montpelier, no responses. So again, all of these towns border Brown County, and we know there's a lot of pressure for land competition coming from Brown County for dairy specifically. And it would have been nice to know what these towns were renting land for, but we do know that Luxembourg is about $275, and we can kind of use that number to sort of base it off of what people are looking for land in this area in regards to a price. We know that Red River itself also has a lot of shallow soil, and we know that it's makes it a bit of a challenge for renting land up there as well. How do you find renters was the next question we asked the people. So if you were a landowner, and so what we did when we had that survey is they specified if they were a landowner or a land renter. If they specified they were a landowner, they were taken to a different question than the land renters. So as a landowner, we asked them, how do you find renters? They said overwhelmingly, by the way, they could also choose more than 1 response because we know that people do find renters in multiple ways. The first question was, how do you find your renters? And word of mouth was by far the most common. And the next most common answer was other. So we got past relationships. The one in specific said this family did their cropping when they were farming, so then they decided to rent the land to them when they got out of farming. 3 people said their neighbors told them, or they were a neighbor. The others said they were already renting land before they bought it. And this is actually a very common question for me. I get this question quite a bit, where people will say, I just bought some land. It's some farmland. I don't know what to rent it for. I have no idea. So what should I rent it for? And that's what the survey definitely is helpful for. And some people said they actually searched out some renters, specific renters, and landowners also said they heard from relatives, or they were relatives, or a written advertisement. How do you find land? So this question was asked of the land renters. Renters, you could choose more than 1 as before. Again, word of mouth is the big one, 95% here. Relatives, so they were renting land from relatives. Written advertisement, we do see those in the newspaper on occasion, sometimes on social media, 15%, and the other 10% were landowner called me, and one person said it was just luck. So what type of operation are you? We did ask this because we do know, of course, there's quite a bit of dairy in this area, but also quite a bit of cash cropping. And we know that especially in Door County, there's a lot of land that is in production for fruit crops. We did not specifically ask, are you a cherry grower? Are you an apple grower? Or whatever it may be, because we did not want to have people feel like we were trying to identify who they were while they were taking this survey. Again, it was anonymous, but we didn't want the questions to be too leading so people wouldn't answer it. So renters, we had 58% that did complete it were dairy, 33% were cash crop, and 9% were other. What kind of lease term do you have and what type? With the term, the landowners said they had annual, 45% said they had annual. Landowners and renters said 2 to 5 years, 50% did that. 5 to 10% there, or excuse me, 5 to 10 years, 0% said that, and 11 or more years, 5%. So we're again assuming with this 11 or more years, these are probably acres planted in trees, some kind of fruit crop. What type of lease do you have? Landowners and renters said that they had a verbal rent agreement, 43% had a verbal, 52% had written, and 5% had a mix of written and verbal. So again, we asked this of landowners and land renters. It's very common for people to have multiple land owners as a renter. So if I'm a farmer, I will rent land from multiple people, and depending on who they are or what kind of agreements we've had in the past, I may or may not have a written contract, maybe just verbal, or a mixture, of course. We asked the renters, the farmers, to tell us what makes land desirable. And we gave them 10 options, and they needed to rank their highest priority being number one. So what is your number one priority when you are renting land? And by far, significantly, proximity to the home farm. And there's a lot to say about that, because it's expensive, of course, to haul machinery, to drive gas back and forth, equipment, multiple types of equipment back and forth, multiple times between the farm and the field. So as close as they can get to their home farm, the better. Moving on, soil type was the next highest priority. So, right now, again, we're in the middle to late April, third week in April right now, and there's a little bit of field work started, but for the most part, Kewaunee County does have quite a bit of clay, and there's none of that soil getting worked right now. So soil type is pretty high priority for farmers. The shape of the field and contiguous acres is kind of interesting, because I say this when people call me and they ask, I own land, I just bought a farm, whatever it may be, what do I do with this land? How much can I rent it for? And they don't necessarily realize that a farmer would much prefer to have one large 40-acre field than a field of 40 acres that consists of 5 or 6 pieces. So definitely they want to have that shape of the field and have it be one field rather than smaller fields. Ease of access from the road, multiple driveways with a driveway, visibility from the road, etc. In the dairy industry, we see a lot of roadside manure tankers. So the trucks would pull up and distribute the manure into a tank, and then they would directly inject it into the field with a hose. And having multiple driveways on a field like that is definitely a benefit to them. Plus the visibility from the road is really important. And of course, it's always nice to have multiple driveways in case you need to get in from a different way. Tiled fields were the 5th highest priority. Sixth was cropping history or future plans. And then moving on with 7, 8, 9, and 10, they were pretty low priority when we compare them to the proximity of the home farm. When we're talking about the percent of people who put proximity to the home farm first, it was significantly higher. Depth of bedrock, depth to bedrock, land use restrictions, limitations to manure, fertilizer spreading, and the lease length were all pretty low priority, and no other options were indicated, so that one was last. So we asked the landowners, what makes a renter desirable to you? Landowners were given 4 criteria, again, ranking 1 to 4, 1 being the highest, 4 being the lowest. Their history and their relationship with the land renter or potential renter was by far the most important aspect to renting land. Having a good relationship and having a good history with that renter was significantly higher than any of the other options, and it is really important overall just to do business. Owner use restrictions. So I am an owner, I'm a landowner, I need to get onto this land at X, Y, and Z at this time of the year. That was important to the landowner. You know, if the land's being used for hunting or whatever, maybe they want to plant some food plots or something like that for deer. They want to be able to access their land when they need to. But of course, it is a renter situation, so they're paying money to use that land, and you own the land, so you need to have a mutual respect for the same pieces of land. Crop history, your future cropping plans were pretty low, and commodity prices, both of those were extremely low compared to the first and second options. Survey limitations and successes. Again, we know this survey had limitations. Limitations, of course, was we only received results online. We did not receive any data from those 4 towns, and 3 of those towns are very heavy farm use areas, high ag areas, and it would have been nice to have some responses from those towns. And some towns didn't have very many responses. So again, we would have liked to see more from those towns, but we're happy with the results we did receive. The successes, the overall response was really great. I am happy with the number of responses we did receive, and these results do reflect what we saw in the National Ag Statistics results. Even results, we did get an even distribution of results coming from renters and landowners, so that was great to see that. Responses verify what landowners and land renters use as priorities when finding renters and or land. So that was really good to see that what we kind of already knew, and it did verify that. And it included all the towns in both counties this time. So we're happy to have everyone included. So that is the conclusion of this survey response results. We will have a website up with all of these results plus a couple of other resources. So if you have any questions at all, please feel free to contact me. My information is here. Erica Bierstrom, Extension Agriculture Agent for Kewaunee County. And so my address is aerica.bjurstrom@wisc.edu. You can also call me at 920-388-7138. Thanks a lot.